A man meets Elena, a seemingly perfect, sober partner, building a cozy life together. Her first drink at a bar unveils a wild side, escalating to a public scandal with a stranger, shattering his trust. After a humiliating video spreads, he ends it, finding peace in solitude and a new perspective on true connection. I met Elena one rainy afternoon at a cafe, and from the start, she struck me as different, modest, sober, kind, and so balanced it almost felt unreal. She sat across from me, sipping tea, and smiled softly. "I'm not big on crowds," she said, her voice calm, and I nodded, intrigued. "Same here," I replied, already drawn to her quiet confidence. We talked for hours, her gentle laugh filling the space, and by the end I asked, "Can I see you again?" She agreed, her eyes warm, and that was a beginning. Our relationship took off with a comfortable rhythm. We moved in together, sharing a small apartment where we'd cook dinner, her stirring soup while I chopped vegetables. "You're pretty good at this," she'd say, and I'd grin. "Only because you're teaching me." Work kept us busy, but evenings were ours. Curled up on a couch with a movie, her head on my shoulder. "This feels right," I told her one night, and she squeezed my hand. "It does." The coziness was new, a stark contrast to my old life, and I loved it. Still, a part of me missed the wild days. Back then, it was beer and barbecued meat with friends, loud music, and late nights. One evening, as I flipped through old photos, I sighed, "Remember those parties?" She looked over, frowning slightly. "Not my thing," she said, and I nodded. "I know. I'll pass on them for you." She smiled. "Thanks, it means a lot." And I pushed the nostalgia down, determined to fit her world. Her maturity impressed me, always planning, always steady. I found myself admiring her more each day. She'd wake early, organizing her day while I stumbled out of bed. "How do you stay so calm?" I asked one morning, rubbing my eyes. "Just how I am," she replied, handing me coffee. Her awareness shone through, saving money, avoiding drama, living with purpose. "You're like a grown-up already?" I teased, and she laughed. "Someone has to be." I felt lucky. Her qualities a beacon compared to my chaotic past. Our days settled into a routine that felt like home. We'd walk to work together, her chatting about a book she'd read. "You should try this one," she'd say, and I'd promise, next weekend. Afternoon, she'd call, "How's your day?" And I'd answer, "Better now," her voice a comfort. Evenings, we'd plan meals, her suggesting, "Let's try that recipe," and me agreeing, "As long as you lead." The apartment grew cozier, her presence a steady anchor. The nostalgia crept back sometimes. One night, friends invited me to a barbecue, and I hesitated. "Want to come?" I asked her. She shook her head, "Not my scene," and I said, "I'll stay," and then she hugged me. "You don't have to," but I chose her, missing the grill's smoky smell. "You're worth it," I told her, and she smiled. "I appreciate that." Her restraint rubbed off on me, and I admired her for it, even as I yearned for a beer now and then. Her qualities deepened my respect. She mediated a work dispute for me once, calm and firm. "Just explain it like this," she advised, and it worked. "You're a genius," I said, amazed. "Just practical," she replied, shrugging. Another time, she turned down a loud party invite, saying, "I'd rather stay home," and I followed, saying, "Me too." Her osasnanas, that Russian word she taught me for awareness, felt like a gift, and I soaked it in, forgetting my old ways. We built a life together. Weekends, we explored quiet parks, her pointing out birds. "Look at that one," she'd say, and I'd nod, "Pretty cool." Evenings, she'd read aloud, her voice soothing, and I'd listen, saying, "Keep going." Work stress faded with her around, her asking, "Rough day?" and me answering, "Better now." The apartment became our haven, her balance shaping me, and I thought, this is what I needed. The past lingered, though. One night, I mentioned a friend's party, the beer flowing. "Miss it sometimes." I admitted. She looked concerned. "You can go if you want," but I shook my head. "No, I'm good here." She smiled. "I like you here," and I hugged her, letting the nostalgia fade. Her Zrelist maturity won me over, and I saw a future with her. Her kindness and sobriety a foundation I wanted to build on. The next day, I went to work, a co-worker asking, "How's life with Elena?" I smiled perfect, man, my voice steady. Back home, she greeted me, "Good day?" And I said, "Yeah, thanks to you." We sat, planning the week, her saying, "Let's cook tomorrow," and me agreeing, "Sounds great." The life we shared felt ideal, her presence a quiet strength, and I was certain she was the one to anchor my once wild heart. A few weeks into our routine, a friend mentioned a new bar opening downtown, and the idea stuck with me. One evening, I turned to Elena as we sat on the couch, the TV humming in the background. "Hey, there's this place everyone's talking about. Want to check it out?" I asked, hoping she'd say yes. She hesitated, her brow furrowing. "I don't know. Bars aren't really my thing," she said, but I pressed gently. "Just to look around?" No pressure. She sighed and nodded. "Okay, but only for a bit." We arrived, the place alive with music and laughter, lights flashing across the crowded room. The vibe was electric. People cheering as a waiter handed out free cocktails to celebrate the opening. "This is pretty cool," I said, taking it all in. Elena stayed close, her arm brushing mine. "It's loud," she murmured, but a waiter approached, offering us drinks. "First one's on the house," he grinned. I waved it off. "I'm good with water." But to my surprise, Elena said, "I'll take one." I blinked at her. "Really?" I asked, and she shrugged. "Just this once." The cocktail changed her almost instantly. She sipped it, her lips curling into a smile I hadn't seen before. "This is actually good," she said, taking another sip. I laughed. "Glad you like it." But something felt off. The bar's energy picked up, people dancing, and I suggested, "Want to find a seat?" She nodded absently, her eyes scanning the room. "Sure," she replied, but her focus seemed elsewhere, and I couldn't shake a flicker of unease. As we sat, the music thumped louder, and she finished her drink, asking, "Can I get another?" I raised an eyebrow. "Another one? You sure?" She nodded. "Why not? It's free." I ordered for her, watching as she downed it quickly. "You're full of surprises tonight," I said, trying to keep it light, but her laugh felt different, louder, less controlled. "Loosen up," she teased, and I forced a smile, the first hint of worry creeping in. The atmosphere pulled her in. A group nearby started dancing, and a guy called out, "Come join us." I turned to her, expecting a polite no, but she stood up. "Let's dance," she said, grabbing my hand. I hesitated. "You sure about this?" But she was already moving, her steps unsteady. "Come on, it's fun," she urged, and I followed, my unease growing as she joined the crowd. Her behavior shifted. On the dance floor, she moved with a confidence I didn't recognize. Swaying to the beat, her eyes bright. "This is amazing," she shouted over the music, and I nodded. "Yeah, you're killing it." But then she laughed with a stranger, their hands brushing, and I called, "Hey, let's take a break." She waved me off. "I'm fine," her voice sharp, and I stood there, the cocktail's effect on her sparking my first real doubt. I tried to pull her back. "Let's sit down, okay?" I said, stepping closer. She pulled away. "I'm having fun. Stop worrying." Her tone stung, and I backed off, watching as she danced with more abandon. "You're different tonight," I muttered, and she shot back, "Maybe I just needed this." The bar's lights flashed, the crowd cheering, and I felt a knot in my stomach, wondering if I'd misjudged her all along. The night wore on, and her energy didn't fade. She ordered another drink, saying, "One more won't hurt," and I asked, "You sure you're okay?" She rolled her eyes. "Relax, it's a party." I sipped my water, the unease deepening as she mingled, laughing with others. "I didn't expect this," I said to myself, and a friend nearby overheard. "She's letting loose, man." I nodded, but the shift in her worried me more than I wanted to admit. We stayed longer than planned. She danced with the group, calling, "This is the best night," and I watched, torn between joining and stepping back. "You good?" I yelled over the music, and she nodded. "Never better," but her grin felt foreign. I sat, the bar's noise fading into a hum, thinking about her usual restraint. Maybe it's just a vibe, I told myself, but the cocktail in her hand and her new demeanor left me questioning everything. The evening ended with us heading home. "That was wild," she said, stumbling slightly as we walked. "Yeah, wild," I echoed, my voice flat. She leaned on me. "Thanks for coming." And I managed, "Sure." Back at the apartment, she crashed on the couch, muttering, "Good night." And I sat in the dark, the bar's light still in my mind. The next day at work, a co-worker asked, "Fun night?" I forced a smile, something like that, but the unease lingered, a quiet warning I couldn't ignore. The bar night took a turn I didn't expect, and as the evening wore on, Elena's behavior shifted in ways that left me reeling. We'd settled at a table, the music pulsing around us, and she finished her first cocktail, her eyes lighting up. "This is stronger than I thought," she said, laughing. I smiled. Take it slow, okay? But she waved me off, ordering another. One more won't hurt, she insisted, and I nodded, uneasy but silent, watching her sip it quickly. Her change came fast. After the second drink, she leaned back, her laugh louder. This place is amazing, she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the noise. I asked, you feeling okay? And she grinned. Better than ever. A third cocktail arrived, and she downed it, her movements loosening. You sure about that? I said, concern creeping in, but she brushed aside. Relax, I'm fine. Her words slurred slightly, and I sat back, the shift unsettling me. A stranger approached, a guy with a confident smile, calling out, Hey, wanna dance? I expected her decline, but she jumped up, saying, Yes, let's go. I stared, stunned. Wait, Elena, I started, but she was already moving, grabbing his hand. Come on, it'll be fun, she urged, and I followed, my heart sinking as she hit the dance floor. Her dancing shocked me. She moved with wild energy, hips swaying, arms raised, her body close to the stranger's. Look at me go, she shouted, laughing, and he joined in. You're a natural. I stood at the edge, calling, Hey, maybe slow down, but she ignored me, her moves bold, almost provocative. This is crazy, she yelled, flirting openly, and I felt a knot tighten. Her behavior a stranger to the Elena I knew. The flirting escalated. She twirled with the guy, saying, You're good at this, her voice playful, and he replied, You make it easy. I stepped forward. Elena, let's take a break. But she laughed. No way. I'm having a blast. Her hands brushed his chest, and she giggled. Oops. I froze. The scene surreal, my mind racing to understand the side of her. I started piecing it together. Her past sobriety, her maturity. It all clicked as I watched her dance. Her inhibitions gone. Why didn't she drink before? I muttered to myself, and a friend nearby said, Maybe she was hiding this. I nodded, the realization dawning. Her restraint wasn't virtue but avoidance. Elena, come on. I tried again, but she spun away, lost in the music. Her flirtation with a stranger a glaring contrast to her usual self. The crowd noticed. People cheered, Go, girl. And she soaked it up, shouting, More music. I grabbed her arm gently, Let's go sit. But she pulled back. Leave me alone. Her tone stung, and I stepped back, watching as she danced closer to the guy, her movement suggestive. This isn't you, I said under my breath. The unease turned into shock. Her boldness grew. She swayed with the stranger, saying, You're my dance partner now. And he laughed. Anytime. I called, Elena, enough. But she waved me off. Stop being a bore. The bar's lights flashed, the crowd clapping, and I stood there, her flirting a public display that clashed with everything I believed about her. I tried to intervene again. We should head home, I said, stepping closer, but she pushed me away. I'm not ready. Her voice carried, drawing eyes, and I felt the weight of her transformation. You're drunk, I said, and she snapped. So what? Live a little. The stranger grinned. She's fine. And I glared, the realization solidifying. Her sobriety was a mask for this. The night stretched on. She kept dancing, calling, Another drink, and I watched, torn. Elena, please, I pleaded. But she ignored me, lost in the rhythm, the stranger's hands guiding her. I sat, the bar's noise fading, thinking, This is who she becomes. A friend patted my shoulder. Tough night, huh? I nodded. The first unease, now a full-blown doubt about the woman I thought I knew. The bar night spiraled out of control, and Elena's transformation turned into a spectacle that drew every eye in the room. She'd been dancing with that stranger, her laughter ringing out, when she suddenly broke away, climbing onto a table. More music, she shouted, her voice slurring, the crowd turning to watch. I stepped forward, alarmed. Elena, let's go, I said, but she waved me off, yelling, Not yet. The DJ cranked the volume, and she became the center of attention, her energy wild and unrestrained. I tried to pull her back. Come on, this is enough, I urged, reaching for her arm, but she jerked away, stumbling slightly. Leave me alone, she snapped, her tone cutting through the noise. The crowd cheered, Go for it. And she soaked it up, shouting, Turn it up. I stood there, stunned, saying, You're making a scene, but she laughed. Good. Her behavior was a shock, and I felt the first sting of public eyes on us. Her antics escalated. She hopped onto bar counter, dancing with exaggerated moves, her skirt swaying. Look at me, she called, and the crowd roared. Phone's out. I moved closer. Elena, please, let's leave. But she glared down at me. Stop ruining it. Her words echoed, and a guy nearby clapped. She's a star? I shook my head. This isn't you. But she ignored me, lost in the chaos she created. The humiliation hit hard. She pointed at me, slurring, he's no fun, and the crowd laughed, some jeering. Come on, man, lighten up. A voice called, and I felt my face burn. Elena, that's enough. I said, my voice tight, but she sneered. You're boring. The insult stung, and she danced on, shouting, more drinks. I stood frozen, the room spinning, realizing I was with someone I didn't recognize. I pleaded again. Let's get out of here, I said, stepping onto bar's edge to reach her, but she pushed me back, nearly falling herself. Get off me, she yelled, and the crowd gasped, then cheered louder. She's wild, someone shouted, and I muttered, this isn't my Elena, the public spectacle tearing at me. She laughed, you don't get me, and I backed off, the humiliation sinking in. Her insults grew bolder, dancing atop the counter. She called, he's a drag, and the bar erupted in laughter. I tried, Elena, stop, but she taunted, can't handle me? Her words cut deep, and a woman nearby said, give her space. I shook my head. She's drunk, but the crowd didn't care, feeding her chaos. I felt detached, like I was watching a stranger unravel. The scene worsened. She grabbed a bottle from the bar, raising it high. To the night, she screamed, and people cheered, clinking glasses. I shouted, Elena, that's enough, but she turned, sneering, you're pathetic. The insult rang out, and I stepped back, the room's judgment heavy. I don't know her, I whispered, the realization hitting. Her sober self was a facade. I tried one last time. Please, let's go home, I said, my voice breaking, but she laughed. Home? With you? No way. She danced on, the stranger joining her, and the crowd applauded. She's free, someone yelled, and I stood there, the public humiliation await. This isn't the woman I loved. I thought, her insults and wildness a stark contrast to her usual calm. The night dragged on. She kept dancing, shouting, more music, and the DJ obliged, the bar blur of noise and lights. I called, Elena, I'm leaving, but she didn't hear, lost in her performance. A friend grabbed my arm. Man, you okay? I shook my head, not really, and watched as she twirled, her words, you're nothing, echoing. The crowd loved it, but I felt alone, the scandal exposing a side of her I'd never seen. I gave up. I'm done, I muttered, stepping back as she danced on, the stranger cheering her on. You're amazing, he said, and she laughed. Better than him. The bar's energy swallowed her, and I turned away, the public spectacle a mirror to my shattered trust. The next day at work, a co-worker asked, heard about last night? I forced a smile. Yeah, wild. But inside, I grappled with the stranger I brought home. The bar's chaos had pushed me to my limit, and after Elena's wild outburst, I was desperate to get her out. She stumbled off the counter, her breathing heavy, and I approached, my voice low. Let's go home, please. I said, exhaustion in every word. She swayed and nodded. Okay, fine. Her tone slurred but agreeable. Relief washed over me as I added, I'll get the car. But she held up a hand. Wait, I need to use the restroom first, she mumbled, and I sighed. Hurry up, then. I waited near the bar, the music still thumping, my eyes on the restroom door. Minutes passed, and the noise around me faded into a dull roar as I checked my watch. What's taking so long? I muttered to myself, glancing around. A friend nearby shrugged. Give her a sec. But then I heard it. A commotion, shouts, and a burst of applause echoing from the hallway. My stomach dropped, and I pushed through the crowd, my heart racing. The scene I found was a nightmare. A group had gathered outside the restroom, phones raised, flashing as they recorded. What's happening? I demanded, shoving forward, and someone laughed. You're in for show. I froze as I saw Elena, her back against the wall, the same stranger from the dance floor pressed close. She was in a humiliating pose, laughing drunkenly, her skirt hiked up, his hands on her waist. Get off her. I shouted, but the crowd cheered. Keep going. I pushed through, grabbing her arm. Elena, what are you doing? I yelled, my voice breaking. She turned, her eyes glassy, and giggled, having fun. The man smirked. She's fine, man. And she nodded. Yeah, leave us. I stared, disbelief turning to anger. This isn't you, I said, but she pushed me back, slurring, mind your own business. The crowd clapped, phone still rolling, and I felt the weight of the moment. There was no going back. The humiliation deepened. "Look at her go!" a voice called, and Elena laughed, leaning into the stranger. "You're boring," she spat at me, her words cutting. I tried again. "Come with me now." But she shook her head. "No way." The man chuckled. "She's with me." And she nodded. "Better company." I stepped back. The crowd's cheers a blur, my mind reeling as I realized the depth of her fall. I pleaded one last time. "Elena! Please, let's leave," I said, my voice shaking. But she turned away, kissing the stranger's cheek. "Ignore him," she told him, and the crowd hooped. "You're disgusting," I muttered, but she laughed. "Says you?" The phones captured it all, and I felt a cold resolve settle. Whatever we had was over. The noise grew louder. People shouted, more. And Elena danced against the wall, the stranger egging her on. "You're amazing," he said, and she beamed. "Better than him." I called, "Stop this," but she yelled back, "Get lost." The applause was deafening, and I stood there, the recording sealing her shame and my shock. I gave up. "I'm done," I said, turning away as she laughed with the crowd. A friend caught my arm. "Man, you okay?" I shook my head, not even close, and watched as she posed for cameras. The stranger's hand still on her. This is who she is. I thought, the breaking point clear, the bar's lights blurred, and I headed for the exit, the noise fading behind me. The walk to the car was a haze. I sat inside, the engine silent, replaying the scene, her pose, the cheers, the phones. How did it come to this? I whispered, my hands trembling. A knock came. Elena, supported by the stranger, giggling. "Take me home," she slurred, but I shook my head. "Not tonight." She stumbled, and he led her back inside, the crowd still watching. I drove to a hotel instead. The desk clerk handed me a key, and I paid for a room, the receipt crinkling in my hand. "She's your problem now," I told the stranger over the phone, my voice cold. Back home, I sat in the dark, the apartment quiet, the night's events weighed on my chest. The next day at work, a co-worker asked, "Rough night?" I nodded. You have no idea. The point of no return etched in my mind. The scene outside the restroom left me hollow, the crowd's cheers and Elena's humiliating display burning into my mind. I stumbled back to the bar, my hand shaking, and flagged down the bartender. "Whiskey, neat," I said, my voice rough. He poured it, the glass clinking against the counter, and I downed it fast, the burn numbing the shock. "Another," I muttered, trying to disconnect from the nightmare unfolding. A friend sat beside me, asking, "You good, man?" I shook my head, not even close, and stared at the glass, the alcohol a shield against the pain. Elena emerged minutes later, her steps unsteady, a drunken smile on her face. "That was amazing," she slurred, oblivious to the chaos she caused. I looked at her, stunned. "You're kidding, right?" I said, but she laughed. "Best night ever." The stranger from before hovered nearby, grinning, and I felt a surge of anger. "Let's go," I said coldly, grabbing her arm, but she pulled away, giggling. Okay. Her happiness clashed with my disgust, and I led her out, the bar's noise fading. The drive was silent, heavy with tension. She slumped in the passenger seat, humming off-key, and I gripped the wheel, saying nothing. "You're quiet," she mumbled, and I replied, "Just drive," my tone flat. We reached a cheap hotel, the neon sign flickering, and I parked. "Wait here," I told her, stepping out. Inside, I paid for a night, the clerk sliding a key across the counter. "One room," I said, my voice mechanical, the decision to separate her from me solidifying. I helped her inside, her weight leaning on me. "You're mad," she giggled, and I set her on the bed. "Get some sleep," I said, avoiding her eyes. She flopped back, muttering, "You're no fun," and I turned away, the room's stale air pressing down. "I'll be back," I lied, needing to escape. Outside, I called a stranger, "She's your problem now," and hung up, the night air cold against my skin. Back home, the apartment felt foreign, the silence deafening. I stood in the living room, the events replaying, her pose, the crowd, the phones. What did I miss? I whispered, pouring another whiskey, the glass trembling in my hand. I set it down, deciding, and grabbed a bag, the zipper loud in the quiet. Her clothes came first, folded with care despite my anger, each item a memory I wanted to erase. I packed methodically. Her books went in next, the pages rustling, and I muttered, all that maturity gone. A photo of us fell out, and I stared, saying, not anymore. I tossed aside, adding her shoes, the laces tangling, my movement steady, but my mind a mess. This is over, I told myself, the bag filling with her life in our home, the alienation growing. The task took hours. I moved to the bathroom, gathering her toiletries, the bottles clinking. She hid to the side. I said aloud, the realization bitter. A friend called. Heard about the bar, crazy, huh? I grunted. Yeah, and hung up, focusing on the bag. Her jacket hung by the door, and I stuffed it in, the fabric rough against my hands. The choice to end it clear. I finished as dawn broke, the bag heavy on the floor. Done, I said, stepping back, the apartment emptier. I sat on the couch, the cushion sinking, and poured another drink, the glass clinking softly. She's not my problem, I told myself, the whiskey warming me as I planned her pickup. The silence was a relief, the alienation a wall between us now. The morning came with a knock. Hotel staff, I assumed. I ignored it, sipping my drink, the bag ready by the door. A co-worker texted, you okay? And I replied, working on it, my resolve hardening. I stood, looking at her things, and said, this is her mess now. The apartment felt mine again, the choice made, the alienation complete, as I waited for the next step. The morning after the bar disaster, I sat in the kitchen, the coffee bitter in my mouth, the bag of Elena's things by the door a silent testament to my decision. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, and I opened it to find her there, eyes red from crying, her hair a mess. Please, let me in, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I stood firm, my gaze cold. No, I said, my tone flat, treating her like a stranger. She stepped closer. I need to explain, but I shook my head, the distance between us growing. She tried to talk. Last night, it wasn't me, she sobbed, wiping her eyes. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. What part? I asked, my voice steady but empty. The drinking, the guy, I don't know what happened, she cried, but I just stared, her words hollow. You seem to know what you were doing, I said, and she flinched. It was the alcohol, I swear. I remained silent, her tears falling. The video from the bar already replaying in my mind. The explanation faltered. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her hands shaking. I looked past her, saying, you didn't just hurt me. She reached out, please listen, but I stepped back. I've heard enough. Her sobs grew louder. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. And I replied, it already did. The kitchen clock ticked, the sound mocking, and I felt nothing but a cold resolve, her pleas bouncing off me. I refused her entry. You can't come in, I said, blocking the doorway. She stared, but my things, and I pointed to the bag. Take them and go, I told her, my voice firm. She grabbed it, tears streaming. You're throwing me out? I nodded. You did this. She dropped to her knees. Don't do this. But I shut the door halfway, saying it's done, the finality cutting through her cries. The video spread. My phone buzzed with messages, friends sending clips of her on the bar, the restroom scene. Phones capturing every humiliating moment. Saw this, crazy, a text read, and I scrolled, the footage looping. She banged on the door. Let me explain, but I muted her, watching the video. Her pose, the stranger, the crowd's cheers. It's everywhere. I muttered, the public shame will wait on us both. She kept trying. Open the door, she shouted, her voice breaking, and I called through it. There's nothing to say. She sobbed, I love you, and I replied, not like this. The clips kept coming, memes, comments. Who is she? And I turned off the phone, her cries fading outside. The kitchen felt smaller, the silence heavy, her betrayal now a public spectacle. I stayed resolute. She knocked again, please, talk to me, and I said, go away. A neighbor peeked out, whispering, everything okay? I nodded, just handling it, and turned back as she yelled, you'll regret this. I opened the door slightly, regrets yours, and closed it, the bag still at her feet. The video spread fueled my decision, her shame my shield. The morning dragged. She sat on the step, crying, I didn't want this, and I watched through the window, saying nothing. A friend called, video's all over, sorry man, and I grunted, yeah. She pounded the door, let me in, but I stayed silent, the public exposure sealing her fate. The shame wasn't just hers, it stained me too, but I held firm. The end came. She stood, bag in hand. "I'll fix this," she whispered, but I didn't respond. The door barrier. The video played on my silence phone. Her laughter, the stranger's hands. And I thought, this is who she is. She walked away, her sobs fading, and I sat, the apartment quiet. The last conversation, a cold goodbye. The next day at work, a co-worker asked, "Heard about Elena?" I nodded. "It's over. The public scandalous scar I carry." The morning after Elena's departure, my phone buzzed relentlessly, pulling me from a restless sleep. I grabbed it, the screen lighting up with messages, videos of her bar antics, memes with her face, and texts from friends. "Did you know her?" One asked, attaching a clip of her dancing on the counter. I stared, stunned, and replied, "Not like this." My fingers shaky. Another chimed in, "Crazy night, huh?" And I tossed the phone down, the weight of it all crashing in. The messages kept coming. A coworker sent a meme, "Your girl's a legend," with a laughing emoji, and I muttered, "Not funny." I opened a video. The restroom scene, her pose with a stranger, the crowd cheering, and felt sick. "You okay?" A friend called, and I said, "No." Hanging up, the phone buzzed again, another acquaintance asking, "Was she always like that?" I shook my head. I didn't see it, and the doubt crept in. I couldn't take it. "That's enough," I said, powering off the phone, the screen going dark. The apartment fell silent, the hum of the fridge the only sound, and I sank onto the couch, the cushion sagging under me. The images replayed, her laughter, the insults, the humiliation, and I rubbed my face, tried to process. What just happened? I whispered, the consequences of her actions hitting hard. Self-doubt gnawed at me. Should I have left earlier? I asked myself, pacing the room, the floor creaking. I thought back to the bar, her first drink, the dancing, and wondered, could I have stopped it? The whiskey glass from last night sat on the table, and I picked it up, saying, maybe I missed the signs. The silence answered, and I sat again, the question lingering like a shadow. I replayed the night, her agreement to go, the cocktails, her shift. Each moment flashed, and I muttered, I should have seen it coming. A friend's voice echoed in my mind. She let loose, and I argued with myself, but I trusted her. The video looped in my head, her pose, the stranger, and I groaned. Was it my fault? The doubt grew, a heavy weight on my chest. Reason kicked in. No, I said aloud, standing up, the decision firming. I couldn't have known. I thought of her sobriety, her calm, and realized she hid it well. The apartment's quiet steadied me, and I added, I gave her a chance. The phone stayed off, the memes and videos of distant noise, and I told myself I did what I could. The self-blame started to fade. The day dragged on. I cleaned the kitchen, the dishes clinking, trying to clear my mind. A neighbor knocked, heard about Elena, wild stuff, and I nodded, yeah, wild. I shut the door, saying, not my problem now, and sat with a coffee, the cup warm but tasteless. The doubt crept back. Maybe I should have walked out sooner, but I countered, she chose this. I faced the truth. The video showed her true self, not mine to fix, and I muttered, I'm not responsible. The couch creaked as I leaned back. The night's event a lesson. A friend texted via landline, you holding up? And I said, getting there. The phone still off. The consequences were hers, and I felt a grim relief, the alienation complete. The evening brought clarity. I cooked dinner, the pan sizzling, the smell of comfort from old days. She's gone, I said, eating alone, the taste bland. The doubt returned. Could I have prevented it? But I answered, no, it was her choice. The apartment felt mine again, and I added, I did the right thing. The silence was a shield, the consequences hers to bear. The night settled. I sat by the window, the street quiet, and thought, I tried. The phone stayed off. The video spread without me, and I said, let them talk. A co-worker's voice lingered, did you know? And I replied to the air, not that Elena. The next day at work, another asked, heard the news? I nodded. It's over. The doubt replaced by a hard-earned peace. The days after Elena's exit left me alone with my thoughts. The apartment quiet except for the occasional creak of the floor. I sat on the couch, the cushions worn, and stared at the empty space where her things had been. I thought no drinking meant she was good. I said to myself, the naivety stinging. A friend called, you holding up? And I replied, figuring it out, the phone warm in my hand. The realization hit. Her sobriety was a mask, and I'd been blind. I started piecing it together. She hid who she really was. I muttered, pacing the room, the silence my only listener. I remember her calm, her planning, and contrasted it with the bar, her wild dance. The stranger. A person is what they hide. I said aloud, the truth settling. A neighbor knocked, quiet now, huh? And I nodded, yeah, just me. The apartment felt lighter, but the lesson weighed on me. Her deception a mirror to my trust. The reflection deepened. I sat at the kitchen table, the wood scratched, and thought. I believed in her maturity. A co-worker texted, heard she's a mess, and I replied, not my mess. The videos flashed in my mind, her pose, the crowd, and I said, that's the real her. The doubt from before faded, replaced by a cold clarity. I was wrong to think sobriety was enough. I admitted. The self-talk a path to understanding. Her last item lingered. A scarf she'd left on the chair caught my eye. The fabric soft in my hands. Time to let it go. I said, standing. I folded it, the motion deliberate, and carried it to the door, the bag of her things still there. A friend stopped by, need help? And I shook my head, just finishing this. I added the scarf, the closure near, her presence fading with each step. I prepared to move on. The evening grew dark. The window reflected my face, and I muttered, she's gone for good. I dragged the bag outside, the night air cool, and set it by the curb. This is it, I said, turning back. A passerby asked, moving out, and I smiled, just clearing space. The apartment waited, and I felt a shift, the self-talk guiding me to peace. The symbol took hold. I stood at the door, the knob cold, and said, no more of her. I closed it slowly, the click loud in the quiet, a final goodbye. A friend called again, you sound better, and I replied, I am. The scarf in the bag outside marked the end, and I sat, the couch familiar, the calm creeping in. I can breathe now. I whispered, the weight lifting. The night brought stillness. I made tea, the kettle whistling, and sipped, the taste soothing. She hid her chaos. I said, the realization firm. The phone stayed off, the videos a distant echo, and I told myself, I see clearly now. A car passed, headlights flashing, and I watched, saying, that's not my life. The apartment felt mine, the self-talk abridged the calm. I embraced the peace. The next morning, I cooked breakfast, the pan sizzling, and ate alone, the taste simple but good. No more illusions. I said, cleaning up. A co-worker asked later, how's it going? And I answered, better every day. The door's closure symbolized freedom, and I added, I know what matters now. The calm was a reward, the self-talk a guide. The day ended with clarity. I sat by the window, the street quiet, and thought, I was naive, but I'm not now. The bag outside waited for pickup, and I said, she's history. A friend texted, proud of you, and I replied, thanks, needed that. The night deepened, and I closed the curtains, muttering, this is my start. The next day at work, someone asked, all good? I nodded. Finally, the calm a steady companion. Time passed since Elena left, and the quiet of my apartment became a comfort I hadn't expected. I woke one morning, the sun filtering to the window, and stretched, say to myself, feels good to be alone. A friend called, how you holding up? And I replied, better than I thought, the phone cool in my hand. The bar that once haunted me no longer stirred memories. Its chaos a distant echo, and I felt a peace settling in. I rediscovered old joys. One evening, I fired up the grill, the smell of sizzling meat filling the air, a reminder of my past. Been too long, I muttered, flipping a steak. A neighbor leaned over the fence. Smells great. And I grinned. Thanks. It's back on the menu. I turned on music, the bass thumping, and danced a little, saying, this is me again. The bar's shadow faded, replaced by the rhythm I'd missed. The lesson grew clear. I sat with my meal to taste rich and thought, true closeness isn't her sweet face. It's balance inside. A co-worker stopped by, asking, miss her? And I shook my head, not anymore. I realized Elena's appearance had chaos, and I told myself, it's what's within that counts. The apartment felt whole, my solitude a strength, the new perspective taking root. I embraced the change. Days turned to weeks, and I cooked often, the kitchen alive with sense. This is living. I said, eating alone, the silence welcome. A friend texted, glad you're back, and I replied, me too. The bar's memory dulled, and I added, it's just a place now. The meat and music healed me, a return to myself I hadn't known I needed. The calm deepened. I walked the streets, the air crisp, and muttered, No more ghosts. A neighbor waved, looking good, and I laughed, feeling it too. The bar's allure was gone, its lessons learned, and I said, I see things differently now. The apartment was mine, the solitude a gift, my new perspective a shield against the past. The final moment arrived. One evening, I took out the trash, the bag heavy in my hand, and paused by the curb. Across the street, a guy and his new girl laughed, heading toward a bar, their steps light. Looks familiar, I said to myself, a smile tugging at my lips. They disappeared inside, the door swinging shut, and I turned away saying, not my path. I walked off. The night was quiet, the stars faint, and I thought, they'll figure it out. A friend called, where you at? And I answered, just walking clear-headed. The couple's laughter faded, and I added, I'm good alone. The bar's pull was gone, my new perspective firm, and I headed home, the piece complete. The next day, I grilled again, the meat sizzling, and ate with music, the sound filling the room. This is my life, I said, savoring it. A co-worker asked, happy now, and I nodded. Finally, the memory of Elena's chaos was a lesson, not a wound, and I told myself, balance is everything. The apartment hummed with my rhythm, the new perspective my guide, the evening closed with clarity. I sat by the window, the street still, and thought, I've grown. The bar couple flashed in my mind, and I smiled. Their choice. A friend texted, proud of you, and I replied, thanks, it's real now. I stood, stretching, and said, this is me, the calm and steady companion. The next day at work, someone said, you seem different, and I grinned. I am walking away with a lightness I'd earned.